Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. And this is where I talk about the books that I read last week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. So as you can imagine, there was not a lot of mental space to be able to relax and read last week. For some context, in case you're unfamiliar, there was an insurrection at the Capitol on Wednesday as Mike Pence was expected to declare and just record the electoral votes for president. And because of that, the chaos and all of that just kind of felt all consuming. So I have friends in DC. It's a place that I've gone to many times, and plus I'm just concerned about the state of our democracy. So not a lot of reading was done last week, but I did finish a few things. So let me go ahead and get started with that and kind of share that with you. The very first thing that I completed was a continuation of a book that I read last month for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. And this is the Commissaire Dupin series. This is the second one in the series. It's called Murder on Brittany Shores. This is by Jean-Luc Bannalec. And I enjoyed this, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first. In this one, a group of bodies were found in a bad state of decomposition, making them very hard to figure out who were they. And there was no distress call from the ocean. This is a environment and a community that's very much about the sea, about fishing, about sailing. And so it's very unusual to have this happen. And it opens up into a mystery that includes ecotourism, greed, and family dynamics, and all of the things that you expect from a mystery. What I like about the series is I love the Brittany portion of it, and set in France, and the food and the culture and all of that kind of stuff is fantastic. This one I just didn't love as much as I did the first. The first, I think it's because the first had so much art in it and history, and the combination of that really excited me. Whereas this, I'm not as much of an outdoors person as if you can imagine that. So I didn't have as much to gravitate to and to enjoy about this one. Still good, just not as good. Next, I read my second book for the Invisible Cities project. I'll put a link to an announcement of that below. What I'm going to do is there's a number of different hosts, and I'll just link to all of the hosts with their announcements, so that way they all get credit for each time that I talk about Invisible Cities throughout the year. It's going to be a year-long reading challenge, and the idea is they pick 3 countries every single month to read from, and you could read 1, 2, or 3. So I have jumped in with both feet and am really enjoying it. I finished the first, which was from Morocco last week. I talked about it in my week of reading. I have finished also the other 2. This one is from Japan. It's Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this is translated by Geoffrey Tousselot. I wanted to like this more than I did. So let me kind of explain why. We are set in a specific cafe in Tokyo. The time period is not really known, modern-ish. And an unusual thing happens in this cafe. There is one seat at one table that if you sit in that chair, you can time travel. And it's usually taken up by a ghost that is visible. People can see this ghost. So the story is really about the people who come into the cafe to sit in that seat. Why do they want to do this? Why do they want to travel in time? And then also the people who work at the cafe. Some of the stories were incredibly poignant. There's a story about dementia and Alzheimer's. There's stories of broken families. those types of things, which were truly lovely and heart-rending, right? The challenge that I had with this book is I never understood the rules of magic. And it just reminded me of how important a fantasy type book is in its world building, in its declarations of why something unusual happens, why here, why now, of how did it come into being, all of that. So we would get little bits of rules here and there, but then they would change and alter. And it just nagged at me. And I couldn't just relax into it and trust where it was going. So it was okay, but just heads up, if you're going to read this, just know that you're not going to get a lot of answers as to why it happens. So that was that book. Next, I also read for Argentina. This is Slim Virgin by Gabriela, Cabezón, Cámara. And this was translated by Francis Riddle. This book, wow. It is slim. It's a little, almost novella, and it packs a punch. It is bold, bombastic, chaotic, vibrant, debauch. It's a lot. It's a lot packed in. We have two main characters. It's structured in a way that each character does a monologue. And then it may switch. Sometimes characters get a couple of chapters and then the other character switches. The two main characters, the first one is a ex-reporter we meet her when she's pregnant, and she and the other character are on the run. And she's depressed. She can barely function. She's basically being nursed back into life from her partner, who is a trans woman who was a very instrumental in the vibrancy of this slum. She was convinced that she was able to talk to the Virgin Mary. Her name was Cleopatra. And so we have Cleopatra and we have Quitty. Quitty is pregnant and she's mourning the loss of a son that she, in essence, adopted in the slum. There is a lot happening and it's very chaotic. Our Quitty is bold, and she meets Cleopatra because she needs a story. She wants something to kind of progress her journalistic career. And when she hears that there is a trans woman who believes that she speaks to a statue of the Virgin Mary in a slum in Buenos Aires, she goes to see what's going on and completely becomes entranced with the characters that are found in this community. And she's there to witness what appears to be a vision given to Cleopatra by the Virgin that says that they need to create a pond, a fish pond, and have fish, like aquaculture instead of agriculture. And so this starts this transformation of this slum. I loved the sense of community. I actually loved how wild a ride this was. The characters are incredibly interesting. There isn't a character that doesn't have multiple dimensions. Very faulty. There is a lot of drug use, a lot of debauchery, a lot of sex, a lot of wildness that is in this book, which I think gives it its potency. There is also a lot of violence and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering because of incredible poverty, just not a sense of value for life that's kind of seen up and down throughout all aspects of the book in terms of the people that they're coming into contact with. I thought this was a very good book. If you can stomach some of the more bombastic sections of the book and the language and the violence, then I think you should give it a try, because I was impressed with the writing. So that's all I completed. As I said, it was hard for me to kind of get my head into last week. Let's talk about what I'm currently reading. So continuing on with Marcel Proust, Volume 2, In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. There's something about reading just 20 pages at a time of Proust that is so meditative, and it just it's almost like taking a hot bubble bath. So I really love that Leo and I take this slowly and just kind of get to it when we can. And so this will be a long volume project that we're undertaking. Then I also am listening to an audiobook, a continuation of the Inspector Linley series, and this is by Elizabeth George. This is the third in the series. It's called A Well-Schooled in Murder. And this is about a child abduction and murder from a boarding school. I do love a good boarding school book, but this one is very dark. It's very dark. It's, there's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of suspicion of child abuse and pedophilia, and so it is really, it's really some difficult material. It was published in 1989, so it has a little bit of a dated feel in how we talk about some of these subjects. But as always, at the heart of this is the class divide between Linley, Inspector Linley, and Havers, who reports to him. And I think that's what I always come back to these stories for, is how they interact in these situations that are so class rich, with strife against, this is a boy who did not have money, who was brought and given a scholarship to this boarding school. So you can imagine some of the conversations that are happening around there. I'm about halfway through. It's good. It's just dark. I'll talk more about it when I finish it. Then I also started Homeland by Fernando Arumburu. The translation is by Alfred MacAdam. And I just started this in audio, so I'm kind of flipping back and forth. This is very, very interesting. It's set in Basque country in Spain. I'm a big fan of San Sebastian. And so this is right at the announcement of the ceasefire between ETA, which is the Basque separatists, and the Spanish government. And so this is kind of like, what happens to, where do people put those emotions when there is no more fight, and how are they left with the repercussions of the damage sown in their lives, in their families, in their culture, in their country. And we're starting off with some women, some mothers, older mothers whose children were engaged in the fight. So I love that perspective, love the setting, love the conflict storyline. So interested to continue on with that. And then for books that I want to read, so here's where I need some help. So I want to continue reading because we're not even halfway through the month, and I've already completed the 3 books for the 3 countries. But I'd like to ask for specific recommendations. Y'all are so smart and so fantastic. So the first thing I'd like to ask for is for the 3 countries that I am currently reading, Argentina, Morocco, and Japan. If you've watched my channel for a while and you have a sense of the types of things that I like to read, historical fiction, I like really lush place. I like day-to-day life. I like really beautiful writing. I like stories of the underdog. I like found family stories, things like that. Do you have recommendations for those 3 countries? And then coming up, I'll also put out the request for China, Colombia. I've already read Garcia Marquez's work, so I'm good there. Egypt, Iraq, Mexico, and Libya. So bring me your suggestions, please. I would love to hear them all. Because right now I have a big list, but I'm slowly kind of looking at this list, and I don't trust Goodreads reviews and ratings. but I do trust you all. So if you all have any ideas for me, please let me know. And I'll put a link down below, a list of what those countries are. So we'll see if I can find any books on the Invisible Cities project that I want to continue on next week. I also got my Book of the Month Club choices. And so many people were raving about this. Leo, the Little Book Life, who I'm reading, I mentioned as I'm reading Proust with, he absolutely adored this. This was on his top list. Now, an unspecific place always unmoors me and makes me nervous. So I am a little anxious about this one. But I hear the writing's gorgeous, and so many people like it, so I'm going to give it a try. I also received Outlaw by Anna North, and this is getting a ton of buzz, so really curious to read this. You know, I love a good, strong woman, and this is at the heart of it. Let me read a little bit of this to you. In the year of our Lord, 1894, I became an outlaw. The day of her wedding, 17-year-old Ada's life looks good. She loves her husband. She loves working as an apprentice to her mother, a respected midwife. But after a year of marriage and no pregnancy, in a town where barren women are routinely hanged as witches, her survival depends on leaving behind everything she knows. Okay, that sounds very, very good. And then, excited to read the next Jane Harper. This is The Survivors. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be looking for, I hear that, and I recognize that Jane Harper does not do a good job with diversity in her writing. So I'm hoping that this one has some more diversity, given that Australia is a very diverse country. So I will be on the lookout for that. I have a link to my Book of the Month Club referral if anyone's interested, because Book of the Month has been doing some really great books as of late. So I include that down below as well. And then the very last thing I wanted to say is I have had a slew of new followers. And so I wanted to say welcome and hope that you enjoy my content, and feel free to say hello. And I'm always try to stay really on top of the comments. Let me know what brought you here, where you're from, and specifically if you have any recommendations of books based on the places I'm looking for and the things that I like to read. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you next week. And again, I have been closing this since March with this plea that we are still in a global pandemic. Please, if you have to be out, maintain safe social distance, wear a mask, wash your hands, and do not touch your face. That's it for now. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.